everyone, this is Brian from ActiveMelody.com. Well, in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to take a look at a jazzy blues composition that's played with just two chords. There's an A chord and an E seventh chord, and we're going to be going back and forth between those two chords. Now, in this video, we're going to take a look at the rhythm part, this poppy, jazzy rhythm. I'm going to break all of that down. In the second video, we're going to take a look at the lead part, which is played using a combination of major scale and minor pentatonic scale, and we're going to be changing the scales as the chords change, and so I'm going to explain all of that in both of those videos. So if you'd like to watch the part 2 video, as well as download the tablature and the MP3 jam track so that you can practice with this, I have that in 2 tempos, by the way. You can get this all at ActiveMelody.com. Just look for EP133. That's a lesson number for this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started with part 1. Alright, so regarding tone settings, I'm running straight from the guitar into the amp. There's no pedals used this week, and so you don't have to have anything. You can do this on an acoustic guitar and it'll sound great as well. The only thing to point out would be I have about 30% reverb on the head of the amp, which then goes out and into the camera. You will hear a little bit of overdrive. The tone breaks up a little bit, and that's mainly due to the pickups in this guitar. These are very hot pickups, and so they really amplify the sound. If I had been playing this on a Stratocaster, you wouldn't hear that. So anyway, I have the pickup selector switch on the neck pickup, and I have most of the treble turned off, so it's more of a bassy tone. And I thought it sounded good for this type of kind of bluesy jazz. It worked for that. Okay, so this is in the key of A, and the first thing we're going to learn to do is play this. These little bright, poppy sounding rhythmic bursts. And it sounds to me like something you might hear a horn section do. They kind of come in these little rhythmic ways. And so the first thing we're going to do is get our left hand down. And what I'm doing is I'm playing just it's really an A major bar chord. So your bar would be here on the 5th fret. And this would be the E chord shape. So if you're playing an E down in position, these 3 fingers, and you just slide everything up, and then you use your finger as a bar or the capo. That's what you're doing there. You're creating an A chord that way. Now, I don't play mine with a full bar. This is just me, so you don't have to do it this way. But I've always just done it like this, so that I'm barring the first 2 strings here on the 5th fret. And then I don't play all 6 strings. I just play strings 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now, I know some people will wrap their thumb over and grab that bass note there, but I've never been able to do that. It just never felt comfortable. So that's how I play my bar chords, my major bar chords. It's the same chord shape as if you were playing an F chord down in first position. Just everything is slid up to this point. So however you want to do it, either this way or this way, either way will work. But that's what we're doing for this this first chord. And one thing you'll notice is the strings do not ring out, so it doesn't sound like this. It's not jingly or jangly. It's real, very tight and controlled. And that's a reason why a lot of guitar players, when you see rhythm guitar players, especially on electric guitar, they're playing chords higher up on the neck, is because they have that control. When you're playing down in first position, you have a lot of open strings oftentimes, and it's harder to control that. So it's just easier to especially if you're doing something very rhythmic, funky, or up tempo, it's easier to control them up here. So now that we've got this chord down, the first thing we're going to do is play. I'm going to do a downstroke with my right hand, and I'm going to play strings 5, 4, and maybe 3 if I bump that one. So it sounds like that. Just a real kind of and it's all this is doing is setting the tempo really. Now the next thing I'm going to do is another downstroke, and this time I'm going to try and play strings 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, all of them. Now if you're making your bar chord like this, you may want to hit your low strings there. Whatever your lowest string in the chord is, just hit those. So if it's that chord, it's the strings 6, 5, and 4. If it's this, it's 5, 4, and 3. And then the next thing is going to be hitting the top part of that chord, or the strings 4, 3, 2, and 1. Or you could go ahead and say 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. The most important notes is to get these 3 strings to ring out, because you're doing a low thing and then a high thing like this. Okay, now the other thing to watch is my hand stays in position, so it stays there, but you'll see the tension release. So I'm fretting it here, and and then I'm releasing the tension, and you hear how it mutes the sound. So it's a combination of hitting it with your right hand and then releasing the tension to stop the sound with your left hand. And it's actually very easy to do. You can do this, even beginners can do this with a little bit of practice. That's the sound you're going for. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is do another downstroke, but this time it's going to be a muted strum, like that. So if we put the three pieces together now, we have... See my left hand? You can see when I release the tension. Okay. Now we're going to do an upstroke. And this time we're going to fret again with our left hand. We're going to push down, and we're going to do an upstroke, and then we're going to release the tension here. And once you do this enough, this will become second nature. You won't have to think about when to add tension and when to release it. It'll just kind of happen. It becomes very natural. That's what you're going to want to practice. You can see my right hand, it has a motion that really never ends, even when I'm not playing notes. Whether I'm doing a muted strum or I'm doing an upstroke or downstroke, the motion stays. In fact, watch me play the rest of this. And so that's key when you're playing rhythm, is to get that motion. And you can see it's kind of the wrist there. It just becomes very very loose, and it just, over time, doing this enough, and a lot of it has to do with making sure you hold your pick right. If you're using a flat pick between your thumb and your index finger, you don't want to hold it like this. It's easy to drop your pick when you hold it that way. So kind of getting the pick exactly where you want it. You may want to play with it. Some people want to hold their pick like this. Some people even play with their pick like this. I've seen a lot of guitar players use this part of the pick, and I've heard people argue that that's an easier way to play a rhythm. So it just depends on how you hold it, but that's what's comfortable for me, about like that. Okay, so now that we got this, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come up and play an A chord here. And this is using the D chord shape. So I know most of you by now, surely you know how to make a D chord down in first position, where we're making that same shape, but we're making it up here so that our middle finger and our index finger are both on the 9th fret here. So that's the first string, and our pointer finger is on the 3rd string. Our ring finger then goes down on the 10th fret, 2nd string. And then that becomes another way to play an A chord. Now here's how you can think to get to this chord. This is important because if you're ever playing rhythm and you want to introduce little chord pops like this to whatever you're playing, look at where this chord is in relation to this chord. That's how I always think of it. And the way that I always visualize it when I'm playing rhythm is I know from where my pinky and ring finger, these two fingers are crammed into this fret here. If I skip a fret and then go to here, and then I can real easily get to that chord. That applies to any major bar chord. So if you're playing a G chord and you want to do the higher version, we'll skip this fret and then we'll play it up here. And that's just an easy way to visualize a higher voicing of a chord. So F would be here. And you can keep going, by the way. You can keep finding, other positions up the neck. But that's a very commonly used one. And what's nice about this chord is it's slidable. So that's how I did it. I went down, up, down. These are the strum pattern. Down, up, down, up. And that allows you to, just to really enhance that rhythm. Now, one other little tip here, if you wanted that to sound more bluesy, you could easily convert this to a 7th chord. instead of it being a major chord, watch this. If we just rearrange our fingers, all I did was I kept these two fingers exactly the same place. So, you know, you got these two fingers straddling that, and now I've just switched them. So now I've got my ring finger and middle finger here on the 9th fret, and then my pointer finger goes down the 8th fret 2nd string, same as the D7th chord shape. So see how those two chords relate? There's your D, D7th. It's the same thing here. There's your A, A7th. So that gives you more of a, that kind of a real bluesy sound. So if you know, it changes it a little bit. So just think about that and kind of play with it as you're playing your rhythm stuff. So then the next chord we're going to play is an E7th chord, and I'm playing it right here. It's in the exact same spot. So there's your A, here's your E7th. You can see how easy it is. Minimal movement in the left hand to create that chord. And the way that I'm making that chord is I've got my ring finger and my pinky both on the 7th fret. My ring finger is on the 5th string, my pinky's on the 3rd string. My middle finger goes down on the 6th fret 4th string. So that, and another way to visualize this, it's the same shape as the D7th chord shape, but you're just making it here. And then you take your pointer finger and push it down here on the 5th fret 2nd string. And if you play those middle 4 strings, that's an E7th chord. Now what's nice about this chord shape is you'll use it all the time. Once you get used to making that, if you move it down here, it becomes a D7th. You've got a C7th, and it just depends on where you're at on the neck as to what chord you're making. But that's a real nice and easy way to make an E7th. You can also include the 6th string and the 1 string if you want, because those are both E notes. So you can actually play all 6 strings if you need to. But for this demonstration, we're going to be sticking to the middle 4 strings because we want to control it. We don't want the strings ringing out. So okay, so from the A, so that's what the E is going to sound like. So we're going to come in here, we're going to, you can see it's, I'm kind of paring it back and almost making it sound a little more muffly. I'm just, and a lot of that is just the way I'm picking it. I'm not picking it real hard, and I'm strumming. I'm trying to keep my strum controlled between the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings. And I happen to bump the 2nd string from time to time, and that's okay, but I'm really just trying to strum here. So I'm going. Let me slow that down. Now just watch that. Watch the left hand first. You can see the tension going on and the tension coming off to create the mutes. Every time you hear the sound, you'll see my fingers going down, and so it starts to really make sense when you see it that way. Now with the right hand, I'm just doing a down up, so I'm going down up down up down up down up down up down up. A little bit of a shuffle to it, so it's not robotic. It's not down up down up down up. It's down up down up down up down up down up. So that's what the right hand is doing. Just over and over again. Just practice that before you even try to fret it. Just see if you can get a real controlled little rhythm that's happening right here on these 3 strings. That'll be your challenge, not bumping other strings. Just trying to control it. Now it doesn't have to be I know some of you get like really scientific, and that's okay. But if you bump another string, or if you're only playing strings 5 and 4 or whatever, that's okay too. Just try and keep it controlled. It doesn't mean it's 100% of the time you're hitting exactly those 3 strings, but that's the goal anyway. So when we play it, then we have. Okay, so that's the first time through. Now the second time through, we stayed on the E, and I went. Now you notice a little difference there on that last note, and that's because I took my pinky, which was already here on the 7th fret 3rd string, and I laid it across, and it's real easy to do. You're just sort of collapsing your pinky there and laid it across so that it's actually technically barring those first 3 strings on the 7th fret, but you're keeping these other fingers down, so altogether it sounds like this. See, there's your 7th chord, and by putting your pinky down, you're creating a 9 chord. It's an E9. So, okay, and the reason I did that on the last time was to create that 9 chord is because we're now going to come up here and we're going to play. So you can see that I'm coming down. There's barring the first 3 strings on the 7th fret. It's the same as this. So that just put me in position, I guess, from a sound perspective, to be able to come up here and slide that chord. Now I'll explain the sliding of the chord here in just a minute, but let me back up from the beginning, from the A. So we have, here's the E7. There's the first time through. Here's the second time through. So let me slow that down. You can see it happens on an upstroke. And notice how quickly that's muted. And that allows you then to put your hand in position. And what I do is I just go ahead and slide it down so that I'm barring the first 3 strings on the 7th fret with my pointer finger. And then I can slide from the 7th fret up to the 9th fret. And we're just going to stay on those top 3 strings, and we're going to go. It's just right down. And when I come up to this position, what I'm playing is I'm playing an E6 chord. And then that's more of a transition chord, or a pass-through chord, back down to the 9 chord. So we have. And you can see, and you've heard that. I know you've heard that in jazz. You've heard it in funk. It's that sliding of a 6 chord to a 9 chord happens a lot on electric guitar, especially. And it's very easy to do because you're just barring 3 strings. It almost doesn't sound right if you don't hear it in context with something. But that's how it's done. All right. So one other note that I added, and you'll see this in the tab after we walk from the 6 chord down to the 9 chord. Is this. I just took my pinky, now some of you may want to use your ring finger, and come up here to the 9th fret 1st string, and then add that note, and then take it off. So it sounds like this. Let me do it again. And then we're back to the A chord. And then there's this little lead part, which I'll show you. But before we do that, let me back up and play everything up to that point. I'll do it slowly. So here we go. Now watch this. This little part goes. So this lead part, what we're doing is we're going to the major pentatonic scale, pattern 2. And I did a lesson on that. In fact, I'll link to this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see a link in the description to the mixing major and minor pentatonic scales. And I have a whole lesson that I did a few weeks ago on this. But I'm not going to go into that here, but that's what I'm doing. I'm mixing. This is that overlap, that sweet spot that I talk about for pattern 2 of the major pentatonic scale and pattern 1 of the minor pentatonic scale. So what I'm doing fret-wise is I'm up here on the 7th fret 1st string, and I slide up to the 9th fret on the 1st string, and then I come down to, so that's the first thing we do. Then I come down to the 5th fret 1st string, and then there's the 7th fret 2nd string, and then the 5th fret 2nd string. So that's what we're going to learn first. We're going to go, and it's just, now the right hand is just down, up, alternate picking. Now watch this little part. Now all I'm doing, I'm not picking each of those notes. I'm only picking that once with the right hand. But I keep my pointer finger down on the 5th fret 2nd string, and then I just reach up here with my ring finger up to the 8th fret 2nd string, and I pick it, and then I slide it down, and then I do a pull off. So it sounds like that. So we have, and then that last note there is the 7th fret, 3rd string. And actually that's a hammer-on, now that when I do it up to tempo. If I'm doing it slowly, I'm going to pick that, but that's actually, so there's a pick, a slide, a pull-off, and then a hammer-on there. So that makes your right hand easy. All you're doing is picking it once, and your left hand is doing all this, you know, you're sliding, doing a pull-off and a hammer-on. But you can see it's a very natural motion for your left hand. It's not anything that's complicated. Especially if you just keep this finger anchored here. And just practice that. And if you can't do it quickly in the beginning, that's fine. Over some practice, though, a little bit of time, you'll be able to do that quickly. Alright, so we have... Now, the way that I concluded it was I kept this bar here on the 5th fret, strings 1 and 2. Actually, in fact, I went ahead and barred the top 3 strings on the 5th fret, so 1, 2, and 3, so that I could play the 3rd string, and I could hammer onto the 6th fret 3rd string, and then do an upstroke on strings 1 and 2. And you can see what I'm doing. That's just the top part of the bar chord for A. I'm just playing it this way, because I just need those top 3 strings out of it. And then once I do that upstroke, and I'm really creating the A chord, and then I can come right back up here to this higher version of the A chord, and then just repeat everything that we had done. It just sort of puts you back in position to be able to do that. And then back to the E7. Okay, so let me back up from the beginning then. Here's the E the first time through, here's the second time through. Here's the E7th again. Now this time through, instead of doing this thing, I came up here and played an E9 chord up in this position. It's an E9 with a D in the bass. That note. Now this is a great chord to learn because it's used all the time. I always think of it as a Freddie King chord because there's the song Hideaway, which is one of my favorite all-time guitar instrumentals. That's the chord. And let me show you how to play it. It'll seem a little awkward if it's your first time to play this chord, but after you do it a few times, your finger will just naturally go to this chord. It actually is fairly easy to do once you're familiar. So your pinky's on the 12th fret 1st string, pointer finger's on the 9th fret 2nd string. Sorry, I have to think about this. Middle finger is on the 11th fret 3rd string, and then your ring finger is on the 12th fret 4th string. And that's what the chord looks like. Seems kind of awkward, maybe a little bit in the beginning when you're fretting it. But like I said, your fingers will just naturally be able to jump into that one. It's not a difficult chord because it lines up with your fingers very comfortably. So my point in all of that is this is the chord we're going to go to. So when we're playing the E part, we're going to come up here and grab the E9 here. Now, I did one thing a little different. After I made the chord, I went... Watch what my pointer finger does here on the 9th fret 2nd string. It slid up to the 10th fret 2nd string, and then goes back to the 9th fret. And that's just kind of a little jazzy breakdown, I guess. So we have... And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing these little downstrokes. And you might want to practice it doing that, just doing that. Now this chord is important to add to your list of chords when you're playing because you can always jump to it. And think about the chord shape. Don't think of the specific fret numbers, because I want you to be able to grab this chord in other positions and see how it relates to the E. So we know this is an E9 chord. Well, we would know that the 12th fret here would be, if we're making an E bar chord, E major bar chord, we could do it like this. You can see that you'd be barring the 12th fret. So look at how these two fingers straddle the 12th fret, our pinky and our ring finger. So that's how it is in correlation to where the major bar chord would be. Obviously, most of you make an E chord down in first position and you wouldn't have room to do it down here, but it's real easy to do it here. So where would it be for an A chord, for example? So if your A chord is here, the bar is here. Therefore, you would make this chord like this. You can see how these two fingers are straddling where the bar was. So I'm just mentioning that so that you can always come to this little chord. It's a great chord to kind of transition and play turnarounds and all kinds of stuff, and it's very fun to play. So after I play this little run that goes all the way down to the A. It's just walking right down the neck, and I made all of the little parts easy to do. Even though it might sound complicated, you'll see it's just 3 or 4 little parts that are actually pretty easy to do, and you'll be able to do this run fairly simply. So after that, we're going to come here to the 10th fret first string and play that note with our ring finger. And then I'm going to come to the 8th fret first string, and I'm going to play that, and then I'm going to hammer on to the 9th fret first string. Now let's look at where we're at. I think of everything in terms of these patterns. It just helps me visualize. So pattern 1 for the minor pentatonic scale of A. All of this is covered in the blues lead course, by the way, active melody. But pattern 1 is here, right? So pattern 2, it would be here, and that's where we are. The only difference is I'm hammering on to that middle note, which would not be in the minor pentatonic scale, but it would be in the major pentatonic scale. And this again is going into that overlap where those two scales overlap. And so, okay, after we do the hammer on, I'm going to come down to with my ring finger to the 10th fret second string, and then I'm going to reach down here to the 7th fret second string. And then the last note in that part of it would be the 9th fret third string. And then I'm sorry, that's actually the last note for this part of it. That's the 10th fret second string. So after we do the 9th fret third string, we do the 10th fret second string with our ring finger. So let's put it together. That's what you're going to want to practice. Now you may want to set a metronome and slow this down. I do have a slower version of the jam track that you can practice this with as well to try and get. But once you can get comfortable, then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to come back to the 7th fret second string, and then we're going to come down to the 5th fret second string and play this. So that's a hammer-on between the 5th fret and the 7th fret, and there's a pull-off. It's on the second string. And then I did a hammer-on to the 6th fret third string with my middle finger. That's an Eric Clapton thing. He does those a lot. So we have... And you can see where we are right here with this lick. Again, that's that major pentatonic scale, pattern 2. So pattern 1, all the happy sounding stuff is down here. Pattern 2 is right here. All right. Okay. And then from here I went. So I took that middle finger on the 6th fret third string, slid it down to the 4th fret third string, 2nd fret 3rd string, 4th fret 4th string. So let's back up. We have let me do it one more time slowly. Now watch this. There's another little hammer-on pull-off thing. This is happening between the 2nd fret and the 4th fret, starting here on the 3rd string. There's a hammer-on pull-off, and there's your hammer-on again. I use my ring finger for that on the 4th fret, 4th string. Okay, so we have now then the last note is an A note, that open A, or I'm sorry, the open 5th string, which is the low A there. And what we've really done is we've walked from way up here all the way down to this low A note. And that puts us in position to go ahead and play the second half. And the second half is really less of the chord stuff, but we're going to be playing more of a lead. And all these little double stops. And there's a lot of Chet Atkins influence that you'll hear in this. And I made this lead up, but it's based on a lot of different influences from all the people that I love. Okay, so let me back up now that we've covered part 1, and I'll play through everything up to all the way through that little lead lick that sort of concludes it, and I'll do it slowly. So here we go. All the way down to the low A. Alright, we'll see you in part 2.